It has been a long day, and it wouldn't be complete. A lot of information has been told, and so, again, in my usual tradition, let me, in my humble capacity, try to summarize everything that has been discussed in this 11th Asian Perspective, which is fondly entitled Improving PRRS Resilience in Pig Farms. Truly, this is a first. A lot of firsts has happened here. It is a first Asian perspective in Japan, and it is the first time that we have held a workshop. And on the trivia matter, it is also the first time that Dr. Victor Rodriguez has come to Asia as well. Welcome to Asia. We start off with Professor Han Chun Yang, of course, describing for us the trickiness of PRRS. It has the intrinsic ability to adapt in pigs. It can easily undergo variation and consistent and even persistent evolution. And there are even emergence of diversified and novel strains in the field out there. I don't know if he caught it, but he did give us some tips and reminders on ways to control PRRS. It is not difficult, or it's not hopeless after all. One is the importance of biosecurity. And you will be hearing that term throughout a lot of the topics, and have heard a lot about that topic throughout the day, biosecurity. He also talked about the importance of strategic PRRS modified live vaccination. He also mentioned the possibility of elimination of PRRS in a farm and, of course, in a certain region eventually, which is what he recommends, particularly for China. And there are other researches now going on talking about natural or even synthesized anti-PRRS compounds that we can look into or look up to in the future. He also touched up a little about genetic resistance and certain pig breeds that could develop some knockout genes that could help us in fighting against PRRS, again with other solutions, holistic solutions in mind as well. Dr. Oliver Duran for Professor Michael Murtagh showed us from the immunologist's point of view how he sees resilience being enhanced in the pig. He showed us some interesting data on individual pig growth after PRRS infection, okay? And the fact that if it does go either single infection, more so for co-infection, then the pig would not be able to recover from it, and the economic damage is truly more devastating. As I mentioned, single infection is already bad, but the more you have co-infections, then the more economic loss that you will have. He concluded by saying that there are physiological and environmental factors that play together and play a large role in terms of resistance and even resilience to PRRS. The immediate environment is critical. Vaccination cannot substitute for a poor environment or inadequate care. Also, try to control concurrent or co-infections that synergize with each other and therefore causing more damage to the pig. So it is important to control co-infections as well. He also mentioned, just like Professor Yang, vaccination, strategic vaccination in particular, the development of feed additives and nutritional supplements in terms of future research, potential resilience enhancers, and the fact that genetics truly plays a role in terms of resilience as well. Then, as a pivot point between science and practice, Professor Harding showed us today some of the leading researches that they have now or have been published as well, both in terms of maternal resilience as well as fetal resilience. If you remember this slide, this talks about the different individual reactions to a PRRS challenge. Okay? These are sows that have been inoculated and the different reproductive manifestations within each particular sow and comparing to others. Each one is uniquely different in terms of how they combat PRRS in their particular body. He also mentioned genome-wide association studies and even SNPs, very interesting fields that can be potential solutions in the future as far as developing PRRS resilience in the future. He made a conclusion that although we have made a lot of progress understanding the complex pathophysiology, there's still a lot of work to be done in order to fully understand it. And our approach is to understand and exploit the natural variation in PRRS resilience, not only individually, but also from population to population. He did mention that we hope to have genetic markers to assist selection and blood markers to preemptively assess the severity and therapeutics to protect against fetal infection and death. Then we move a little towards practice now with Dr. Satoshi Otake spearheading the talk on biosecurity. It is a series of topics that we have had today as well. And Dr. Otake showed us there are 5 factors, not just biosecurity. Of course, biosecurity is as important as all the other 4 factors in terms of strategic, holistic, if I may add, control of PRRS. But again, biosecurity was his focus for today, and he discussed it very well. Biosecurity, he mentioned, has to be science-based. It should be practical. It should be effective, not just effective trial-wise, but it has to be cost-effective as well. At the end of the day, for us in the farms, it is a business after all. The commitment to continue and execute, and I would, if I may add, implement as well, is also important, and that biosecurity has to be measurable. He showed us as well a very, very interesting study. I don't know if you caught it, such that in high biosecurity farms, the cleaner farms, I would call it, you would have less need for antibiotic use. That is very interesting for me. So he had some take-home messages to say that to date, the pig industry, particularly in Asia, does have a lot of diseases, yes. PRRS is one of them, and it is considered an economically significant swine pathogen. But biosecurity does play a fundamental role to its control and the development of resilience in the pig. Antibiotic usage will be challenged in the future. That means you have to consider your costing of antibiotics now, especially with high production cost and efficiency nowadays. Controlling PRRS through biosecurity can contribute to reduce antibiotics, as what Dr. Otake showed in their study on the correlation of the level of biosecurity and antibiotic use. And that biosecurity, finally, has to be a comprehensive approach. and requires regional and even global collaboration. Talking about biosecurity, Dr. Rathken this time showed us a tool for biosecurity, and he presented to us and even encouraged us, let's combat. Combat, after all, is based on the 5-step process. 1, what is your goal? What do you really want in your farm? Number 2, determine the current status. But combat in particular is anchored on step number 3. What are your current constraints? You know where you want to go, what is your current status, but also what are your current constraints. And of course, that will help in step 4 and 5, which is developing your solution options, which eventually you need to monitor and implement as well. We saw how through this app called Combat, you are able to assess individual intricacies or specialities, something peculiar in the farms. Okay? Whether you are, because of your practice or your location in your farm, is it a high risk? Are you in a high risk? Or are you in a very low risk after all? Now, he did mention that with Combat, it facilitates improved biosecurity and pig flow, as well as management practices. It incorporates measures to reduce these risks. And finally, it serves as a benchmark as well that helps the producer to address risky behaviors or even risky practices and even risky locations, I would say, that affect the disease resilience on the actual production site. Talking about biosecurity, we move now to an actual success story. And that was what Dr. Chan Youth Tretip School mentioned to us, not just in one farm, but in a large system in their particular operation. He showed us how they do it in terms of diagnostic monitoring, both in ELISA and PCR, involving different ages of animals. He showed us as well their different methods of guilt acclimation and how they try to lessen the effects of PRRS and therefore promote PRRS resilience in the farm. He mentioned as well that in terms of herd closure and rollover, in order to control PRRS and in order to produce, therefore, very healthy progenies or pigs. Now, this time, Dr. Tom Gillespie shared to us, aside from biosecurity, how about management and pig flow as part of, again, your holistic approach to promote resilience against PRRS. He showed us a very important concept, which is the horizontal and vertical transmission or infection chain, as he fondly called it, wherein if you find the problem in your fattening or even your farrowing herd, try to work back. Is it a problem in your gilts or in your sow herd? Probably it is, because after all, it is an infection chain that can be passed on from breeders through vertical transmission to farrowing or weaners and weaning to finish sections. He mentioned that in the US, their goal is to start with a PRRS negative PCR piglet at weaning. He also mentioned that the second phase is to vaccinate the weaned piglets to reduce viral load. So you're able to shut down already initially the vertical transmission, but also try to take care as well in developing an active immunity with your weaned piglets. The 10 golden rules is also one of the concepts that Dr. Gillespie has mentioned, and it talks about a holistic approach in terms of management, from cross-fostering, when to do it, not to do it, in terms of biosecurity, again, being stressed by one of our speakers, and in terms of hygiene and sanitation as well, in order to bring down the level of infection. He also showed us a very interesting concept on what they do in the farms by combining immunization or vaccination as well as diverting the flow through partial depopulation, creating that bubble so that there is no pigs that the PRRS virus can jump into. Okay? He, not only management, he stressed, but also, again, he emphasized as well the importance of biosecurity, and there's an interesting term called bio-exclusion, biocontainment as well. And these are very important concepts in order to, again, promote and develop the resilience to PRRS. And finally, Dr. Victor Rodriguez showed us an interesting tool also promoting biosecurity as well. It's called PTRAC, or Pathogen Tracking Kit. He showed us how this unique tool can help you in trying to trace the movements of people, pigs themselves, and even equipment. Very interesting prospect. Showed us how the not only this equipment, but also the accompanying app works. And you can even store it, the information, in a central data storage. Talking about data storage, you can even trace, for example, what particular movement does each animal, equipment, or even people do in a farm. And he gave us some take-home messages. You need to minimize the agent's dissemination inside the farm. And with PTRAC, it's a real-time analysis and management of the staff movements, tool movements, and even, I would say, vehicle movement. He stressed the importance of training as far as improvement using PTRAC is concerned. Before I give you my usual farewell message, this is a first where we had workshops as well. As I was going around the different workshops, there were interesting questions and topics that were raised. How do I get PTRAC? How do I buy it? Is it readily available? What are the conditions for me to get PTRAC? For combat, what is the, what was that again, Dr. Ratkin? Very interesting question. Can we weed out fake data from combat? And it was a resounding no. There are certain limitations. We don't know if a person is lying. You have to have a lie detector for that. There's other devices for that. But again, it has its own use, both PTRAC and combat. Now, in the session where I was in, Meet the Experts, a lot of questions ranging from vaccination, even regulatory issues about vaccines, and a lot of questions on antibodies. And I think one of the common answers by our experts there, do not overinterpret antibodies, and even ELISA results. You have other tools. You can use ELISA results, but only as part of your diagnostic portfolio or a holistic diagnostic program. Okay. So, a lot of firsts for our 11th Asian perspective, and I close our 11th edition with my usual question to you. With all the information that you have received, at the end of the day, you decide what you believe in, what you want to take home, and what you want to implement in your respective jobs and operations. So I leave you with a question. What is your perspective? Thank you very much.